Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone to the, this is the fourth webinar in the Australasian Evaluation Society Design and Evaluation Special Interest Group webinar series. So we decided to do 4 webinars in the lead up to the conference. The first one was delivered by Jess Dart, so that was just an introductory webinar, and it also brought together a bit of thinking from the 2016 Australasian Evaluation Society conference, where this group formed. So that just consolidated a bit of where we were at then. And then we looked at, this was Jess again, and she delved a bit deeper into how evaluators are supporting social innovators. So looking at people who are doing design out there, so that's the social innovators, and how we as evaluators might have some new opportunities to work with them, and what some of the challenges were with that. And then Matt, the most recent webinar was delivered by Matt Healy from First Person Consulting, and he was looking at using some human-centered design methodologies to inform the way we design our monitoring and evaluation products. All 3 of those webinars were recorded, as will this one be. So if you did miss any, you can go back and listen to them. And I'll give you some direction on that at the end of the webinar. But this 4th one, the one that I'm delivering today, is about evaluators doing design. So this is evaluators not supporting other designers, but actually going in there and trying their hand at doing a bit of design. And I guess just for your benefit, I'm a consultant at Clear Horizon. I've been here for about 3 years, and this is an area that I've been quite interested in, and got the chance to work on a couple of projects, and one of which I'll be talking through in a bit more detail today. But yeah, I've got a strong and ongoing interest in working in both evaluation and design. So that's sort of, I'm just hoping to share a bit of that thinking today. So yeah, basically today I just want to start by recapping a couple of definitions that might be useful to hold on to as we go through the talk. Then I want to talk through in sort of a bit of detail a case study that we're calling an evaluator's approach to design. And this is a design that a team of us here at Clear Horizon did a little over a year ago now, but just some reflections on that process. And since doing that design, we've sort of entered this world of human-centered designs come into the consciousness, and a lot of more people have been talking about it. So we weren't as aware of that then when we did this first design. So I wanted to contrast a little bit of what we did as evaluators, and using an evaluative approach to design to sort of some of the more common human-centered design methodologies that are being used. And then I'm going to, yeah, there'll be some time for Q&A if people have some follow-up questions. But yeah, that's what we mean to get through today. So I'll just move on. Okay, so yeah, this is just going through some definitions. And the first thing that I just wanted to recap on was the idea of design thinking. So I've got a couple of definitions up there, and one of them comes from the design world, so people who are working as design professionals. I guess you can think about them as you know, equivalent to people who say they are evaluation professionals. So that first definition is design thinking is a methodology used by designers to solve complex problems. And find desirable solutions for clients. A design mindset is not problem focused, it's solution focused and action oriented towards creating a preferred future. So that's a definition from the design world, and I just wanted to quickly contrast that to our definition. So at the start of the design SIG, we put it out to the members to ask what we thought design was, and we did a bit of coding and came up with this definition here, which was a purposeful and systematic process to create positive change. And I'll just highlight a couple of similarities there. So really design thinking in the blue there, it's a process. So it's something we work through, and that comes out in both definitions, but it's also something that's, it's about creating improvement in the world. So it's something, yeah, in one of those definitions, yeah, we've got creating a preferred future and creating positive change. So they're really the core parts of the definition that I think are stand out as what design thinking is. It's going through a process to create desirable change. And I just wanted to also highlight, so there's a diagram down the bottom there. It's a process and heading towards some sort of improvement, but from our experience working with designers, it's also a highly iterative and adaptive process. So designers never shy away from, if something isn't working, they're very comfortable going back to the drawing board and starting again. So it's also good to keep in mind that this process that we're talking about, design thinking, is really highly iterative and in nature. So I might leave that one there for now. The second definition I wanted to just quickly touch on was the idea of human-centered design. And this definition comes from IDEO, who are really held up as the leaders in sort of global design. And they work across all sectors, private and government, to solve problems through design thinking. But they take it a little bit further, and the process we just talked about, the design thinking process, they put human needs and challenges and solutions at the core of that design thinking process. So what we're going to be talking about today is human-centered design, which is really, in a nutshell, it's design thinking, putting human needs and human challenges and solutions at the core of the process. And yeah, just taking that a little bit further, I just wanted to set up that what we're actually going to get into the detail of today is a methodology for co-design. So what I mean by that is where us as the evaluators or the designers take a process where we come in and we are we're the keepers of the process, and we're not the content experts. So what's important about that is that we come in as content free and take people through a process asking the right questions at different stages, and we really have to ensure that we're working with partners and people that can point us to the right content along the way. And I'm not sure how other people work, but at Clear Horizon, a common example of how we do this within evaluation is when we're building program logic. We might work with a group of people to take them through the process of building, the broader goals and down to the end of program outcomes, and then developing the pathways and activities. But we don't necessarily bring the content there, but we bring the process to help them articulate that. So it's the same kind of approach that we want to take to human-centered co-design. So yeah, just 3 definitions to hold in your mind. Design thinking, it's a process to solve a problem and create positive change. Human-centered design means putting people's needs at the center of this process. And then co-design is really just remembering that what I'm framing here is about a way evaluators can take people through a design process, but work with them, and they provide the content. All right, so I'm going to go through the main part of the webinar today, which is a case study of a design project that a team of us at Clear Horizon did together. And this was, a little over a year and a half ago, this project would have started. And basically it was a fairly big brief, and not something that we do all the time, but something that we were definitely interested in doing more of. But basically there was a state surf life-saving peak body, so responsible for coordinating all the surf patrols and community education in one Australian state along the coast. And they had a brief for a consultant to come in and assist them to design, monitor and evaluate a new evidence-based community education program targeting high-risk drowning groups. So we were interested in this, but we knew that we didn't, if that design word was taken off that brief, if it was just the monitor and evaluate an evidence-based community education program, we would have been, no worries, we could do that. But we had to do a bit of extra thinking, and because it wasn't so common for us, especially in an Australian context, to do design as well. But just providing, I guess, a little bit more detail on the brief. So we wanted to target these high-risk drowning groups in the state. So we had a little bit more than that to go on at the start. The Surf Life Saving body had identified some places where people were drowning, and they'd also done a bit of analysis to figure out who the people that were drowning were. So what they found was that adult men, usually from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds, were most commonly drowning in 3 locations across the state. So we had a bit of a profile of who was drowning and where they were drowning, but we also had a bit of an idea where they were from. They were all from a greater metropolitan region and travelling to these same 3 spots that they were getting in trouble and drowning in. So we had a little bit to go on from the start. And we also had an indication from them that they wanted to do an educational intervention or campaign, a community-based one. So we had a little bit of an idea of the mechanism that they wanted to work with. But that was really our starting point for this project. Just moving on now to the methodology. So based on that brief, we needed a methodology, and we needed something that was going to meet the brief, and it had to be a little bit different to normal just monitoring and evaluation response. We needed to do the design. So to do this, we talked to some of our colleagues who work in international development. So Clear Horizon works, about 1/3 of its work is in international development context. And we were able to learn from them and draw from them to come up with a bit of a proposed methodology that we could use to answer this brief. So what we came up with was a 5-step process. You can see that in this diagram here. First step, very similar to how we do most of our projects, was to do a bit of scoping and find out what we could. Then we went into a phase we called discovery, which is where we really wanted to dig deep into more detail about more about the what. So what was the challenges? Why were these target groups getting into trouble in the first place? And then we also dug into more detail on the how. So some looking across the literature and talking to experts about how similar problems had been addressed in other places. So we spent quite a bit of time on this discovery step, really getting across what was going wrong and some of the ways, the hows that people were addressing that kind of problem. Based on that, we had enough to go into some design planning. So really thinking about what the activities would be and what the outcomes we were hoping to achieve through those activities would be. And by the end of that step, we were ready to step away a little bit and hand it back to the surf life saving body who delivered the pilot. They delivered the pilot over one summer, one summer with the target groups, and then we were able to come back in at the end after it had been delivered and do some evaluation, which we were very comfortable with. So that's the process, that blue arrow there. But I guess this whole time we were also reliant on key stakeholder feedback and end user input as the content. So this is what I was talking about before, that idea of co-design. For all of those steps, we were seeking input and people to sort of test our ideas and tell us if they thought things were realistic and that sort of thing all the way along. And those key stakeholders were the client. There were other people in the surf life saving sector, I guess, and then they were also representatives of those high risk drowning groups that we were talking to all along the way. So the last thing, just a couple of things to point out about this diagram is that you can see there was an iterative nature. So there's some orange arrows in the middle of the diagram, and they just indicate that as we went along, the design developed and got stronger as we went along. So in scoping, we were able to pick up a little bit about the design. Discovery allowed us to figure out a bit more. So did the planning phases. We learned a bit through delivery, and then finally through the evaluation and that was all informing the design, the whole way through. And the tool that we found most useful, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, was using an iterative theory of change to hold the whole process together. So we had a dynamic theory of change, or a lot of people call it program logic, that we were building this whole way that held this design together. So I'm just going to go through now how each of these steps, how we built program logic at each of these steps. Okay. So I guess to start with, overall program logic we found was a really good way to structure the design, because it really gave us this tool where we could constantly reflect on what we were trying to achieve. So that in that first diagram there, that's the broader goals and the end of program outcomes. So where we were heading, we could reflect on that, but at the same time we could keep an eye on how we might get to that point. So program logic gave us that advantage in this design context, where we could just keep an eye on and allow to shift and evolve both what we wanted to achieve, which really was around safer beaches and ocean literacy for beach users, and how were the best ways to do that? What were the community education projects that were most relevant to achieve what we wanted? But at the same time, we were allowing this to shift and change. So we found that was a really effective tool. not only because it's dynamic, but also because we use it all the time in evaluation. So it was great to reapply it. So the first step that we talked about before as part of program scoping, the key parts of program logic we were able to build there were the broader goals and end of program outcomes, so we could really set the strategic direction and just get a bit of an orientation about where this project was heading. We also got to map and just a few early ideas of ways that people were heading towards this this outcome. So we got an idea of some existing activities that were already happening there. So yeah, that allowed us to start, and it was really useful because we were no longer designing sort of in a complete vacuum. We could grab a few bits and pieces that could help us to start. In this stage, like apart from program logic, we also grabbed a few things just to orient us and set the design window up, and that was around, we could get the budget, which was really low. It was $20,000 for the delivery of the pilot over the summer. But this is quite common with design in that they're low investments and low risk. We got the timeline, as I said, which was just over one summer, and we got a little bit about the delivery mechanism, which was they wanted it to be a community education program. And we knew the target group of interest, which was these men from cold communities who were rock fishing. So that allowed us to move and gave us a bit of orientation for the discover phase. So in the discover phase, which is really where we spent most of the time. So this whole design probably took about 8 months, and then there was 6 months of delivery. So I reckon we would have spent about almost 4 months in this discover phase, which was made up of three main methods. We did a situation analysis, a literature review, and we did a broad consultation. And from these, what we were really researching was getting a sense of what were the intermediate outcomes that needed to be in place for what did the literature say, what did the community say, and what did the surf life saving community, what were their hunches about what were the intermediate outcomes that had to be in place. And really what we landed on was, from memory, the knowledge, the awareness, the skills, connection to surf safety messages and things. Really, for those groups, that was what we needed to. That was the point we needed to get to for those people. But we were able to define that by collecting this evidence in the discovery phase. And we were also able to shore up more of the existing activities that were being done to achieve these intermediate outcomes, because another part of the design is we were trying not to duplicate. We had limited resources, so we wanted to, whatever we decided to do with our $20,000, we wanted it to be something that filled a gap rather than did something that was already being done. I just wanted, just before I move on as well, just in this discover phase, what we learnt was that consultation was really important. So, and good engagement, because this project was going to rely on partnerships. It was going to rely on partnerships with the culturally and linguistically diverse communities, and it was going to rely on partnerships with other surf life saving community education bodies, and a lot of them didn't have much resources. They rely on volunteer bases. So we really had to really plan our engagement really well, because we needed to ensure that these groups were happy with the development of the project, and you know, potentially willing to be involved in whatever the final design ended up being. So I guess it's just important to, like, while the discover phase is important to find out a lot of things, it's also important to bring people along. And we found using the IAP2 engagement guidelines quite useful to plan some good engagement there. Okay, just moving on. So once we'd assembled the intermediate outcomes that we thought we needed to achieve, we moved into the design planning phase. And this was really structured around a participatory design workshop. So that's the method we used to get to this point where we could finally, complete a program logic model. And yeah, so the way we did that was to bring back in all the partners and all the people that we thought were important, and we're going to have a stake in delivering a project that would work for this target group. We brought them back we got them all into one room, and we took them through a workshop to really think through what was possible and how we could reach these people with surf safety education. And through that process, we were able to not only set in stone what our broader goals, end of program outcomes, intermediate outcomes were, we were also able to more clearly define what we thought our intermediate outcomes and our activities were. So we often call that the theory of action. So that the way that we're going to get the intermediate outcomes to happen. Yeah, so we got through this workshop, and at the end of the workshop, we took away what we could, and we were able to come up with an implementation plan, which is and a budget and everything for the project. But we were also able to develop an M&E plan for the pilot. So that was where our evaluator skills really came in. We could come in and decide what had to be monitored and evaluated to figure out whether this design really worked to achieve what we wanted. And then, yeah, we would move into stage 4, which was pilot delivery. And this is where the Surf Life Saving Body took over. They went out, they delivered 3 beach days that were targeted at families and children who were connected to these high-risk men. And we supported them remotely by sending them monitoring templates and things like that, so that they could collect data about both what it ended up being was both the cultural appropriateness of the education methods. So in the delivery model, that was quite important, but also whether that by getting the families there, which was another assumption of our model, that was a way to reach the men in the community. So we were also set up some tools to collect that kind of information. And then, yeah, so that went through summer, and we got to the end of summer, and we came back to them, and we were able to do a pretty basic formative evaluation. We had running out of a bit of budget at this stage, but we could come back and take that monitoring data and then compare it back to our activities and the immediate outcomes we achieved. And we were able to refine how we thought that model worked. And we got a really good outcome. The Surf Life Saving Body, we haven't been working with them since, but they are continuing to implement this program based on the learnings from this pilot. So yeah, it was quite a unique project in that we got to be there right from the design, and then we even got the chance to come through to the evaluation. So that really sums up that little case study and the methodology that we used, which was underpinned by program logic. All right. I might let that. I'm about to go into. We've got a bit of time, so I might actually just quickly ask. Does anybody have any questions in relation to this methodology that I've just talked through now? Before I move on, what I'm going to do next is have a look a bit more quickly at the methodology that human-centered designers use to tackle this sort of problem, and then compare that to the one we used as evaluators and see what the differences are. But all right, so for people who've seen this, who've listened to a couple of the other webinars from the AES Design SIG series, we have presented this model here a couple of times. So what we're calling it here is and what we're using it to highlight really is a fairly standard approach to design that people who are design professionals use, and they also use this co-design process quite often as well. It's called the double diamond framework, and I guess, yeah, what I want you to think about this as is an alternative approach to the one that the 5-step process that I've just set out above, which used program logic at its core. So I guess just the key points from this diagram really are that this is a framework, the double diamond framework, that is used widely by designers. So that company that I mentioned above, IDEO, use it to frame their design processes, and also we've been working quite a lot with the Australian Centre for Social Innovation in the last year or so, and they use this to frame their designs as well. So the process really, it's structured around the concept of, you can see here, divergent thinking and convergent thinking. So yeah, that really, divergent thinking is supposed to be unrestrained and creative. So it's supposed to allow, in a nutshell, it's about allowing space to go big and think big without too many restrictions. And convergent thinking, as the name suggests, is about narrowing back in from that creativity and then opening back up again. So there are two diamonds, two versions of divergent and convergent thinking. The first one, discover and design. This is the really sort of the messy area. This is the bit where you're spending a lot of time thinking about what the challenges are. What really spending a lot of time just really thinking about the what, like what's wrong, really thinking through, are we thinking about the right challenges? What are the right things to look at? The second idea is about ideas for it. Once you've decided on, got a fair idea of what you think the right challenge is, you can go in and pick one of those off and do a bit of thinking or come up with some ideas for how you might solve that challenge. So you're moving through developing an idea, and you'll go out on that, but then you'll get to a point where you've decided, I've developed enough, I've got enough of an idea of what I want to achieve, and then you'll go into the delivery phase, and really that's where your ideas hit the road, and you're actually doing prototyping or piloting at this stage. So as I sort of tried to allude to earlier, if you just look at the arrows around this diagram as well, it just does show that the designers are highly iterative. So at any point along that process of discover, define, develop, deliver, it's really common for designers to just be completely comfortable and just being like, oh well, that's not working, I'll fold all the way back around to discover and we'll start again. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea about how designers think about doing work. And it is slightly different to our framework that we talked about, which was maybe a little bit more systematic and step by step. All right. Oh, sorry, I just skipped through a slide here. All right, so what I've tried to do here on this slide is set out some initial thinking about what parts of the double diamond that we ticked off on in our design for the Surf Life-Saving Organisation. So I've used, just as a visual prompt, I've used a bit of a traffic light system here just to show the things that I think we did really well and where they fit along the design cycle. So that first stage, which was scoping, I think we did okay. There's a couple of questions around that and how that fits into the double diamond design methodology. The discover and design planning phases, so right through the discover, define and develop phases, I think we missed a couple of things there in terms of human-centered design. And then at the end there, the pilot delivery and evaluation, I think as evaluators we brought a lot to that because really that's what we do all the time. But those other areas are areas where I think there's some room for improvement. So I'll just very quickly set out what I think was missing from those stages. So the scoping stage there, I think we did do a good job of that to get a bit of clarity. But what happens when designers are at this beginning stage of a project is they do something called rip the brief. So rather than putting any scope on at this stage, they really allow themselves to sit in uncertainty a bit more than us. So they wouldn't have sought to frame their problem at this stage. So how that impacted the second two stages in red, discover and design planning, as I understand it, is that may have limited our design's ability to explore maybe more broadly ways to solve the brief that we were, or to address drowning prevention for the target group. If we had not put any scope on at the start, we may have ended up with a very different pilot project, and we might have picked a different challenge to work on. But we did do that, and we got to a good result. But if we're just thinking about applying it to the double diamond, that's something that diverges. Moving along to the discover phase, this is where we didn't do something that designers do a lot more of. We did some of it, but in this stage it would be very normal for designers to sit down and use some sort of anthropological methods. And what I mean by that is they would sit with the people who the design is for. So this is really the human-centered part. They would sit down and do really detailed interviewing to get to the needs and challenges facing the target group. So that in this case, I think if we wanted to be more human-centered and true to the double diamond, we could have spent more time interviewing rock fishermen from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. We were limited in the way that the tender was set up to be able to do that, but this is just for comparison. And yeah, that issue went right through to the define and develop. Like, if we could have included the user in more of the design planning stage, I think that we might have got a more nuanced product in the end, because ultimately we were designing for them. But that step 4, pilot delivery, we did really well, because we just, we do that all the time. It was an evaluation, was monitoring, and then evaluation through to the end. So for me, yeah, the take homes when we compare these two models is that we do bring strength to design as evaluators, and using logic was a really powerful way to expose assumptions and do some critical reflection on what our ideas of the what and the how were. But I guess what we're grappling with here now in our practice at Clear Horizon, and that sort of moving in more, if we really want to move more into this world of human-centered design, then we probably need to think of some more ways to bring in the user voice along the way, and make it, maybe we need to make a bit more space to be creative at the start of any design project we're at as well. But that'll be up to maturing of the market as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to get to for comparing the two different models. I'm just going to finish on this slide here, which comes from an evaluator working in Canada, Mark Cabage. He presented this slide at his course, Evaluating Complex Community Change, and he's a person who works with designers all the time. But what it really sets out is that there are some stereotypes, of design thinking and evaluation thinking. And yeah, I feel like for us, they're quite useful to reflect on. So on the left-hand side there's the purple brain. It says blink. So this is the side that sort of is the more designy thing. Like, people are more willing to work in uncertainty and use their intuition and get rewarded for their sort of innate skills and speed and the reflexivity, whereas evaluators might be more characterized by really being systematic and analytical, and putting effort into thinking about assumptions and slowing down that sort of process. So where we're at in this sort of thinking is that obviously neither designers or evaluators fully fit in either side, but they are useful stereotypes. But in our approach to design, we know that what we bring that designers don't have is that ability to slow down and really check in on assumptions. So that's where we're at, and we know that we also need to sort of hone our skills around being a bit quicker and willing to sort of let go and take a few risks with ideas. So it's a bit of an open question for us as to how we handle that, but we really do want to, and we're sort of tackling head on how we do enter this world and how we go forward. And I hope we do more design. That really is an enjoyable way and fun and challenging way to apply our skills as evaluators. So I hope we move into that area more and more. I I'm going to finish the main part of the webinar there, and I'll just, I'll finish by asking for any questions or reflections on that so far. You can, I mean, anything confusing or anything to recap on, but yeah, just a chance for you to ask anything that might have come up. All right, so I've got a question from Jackie. I'll just answer that now. All right, so the question is, we did a design-based project a few months ago, and people in workshops were struggling to put their creative brains on and think outside the box. What worked well when you were in your discovery phase? So, okay, in this particular case study that we've just talked about, I think where we got the most reflection was to go out. So we had a consultation where we spoke in the discovery phase, where we went and like consulted really broadly, and we listened quite widely, and we didn't really put any restraints on. One of the questions we did ask people was like, what are your ideas for how we could sort of solve this problem, or what do you think it needs to be done? So we talked to sort of local council members, we talked to, you know, surf life saving practitioners, we talked to people from the called communities, and then we were able to, so we brought those ideas, which were quite broad, and we didn't filter them too much, but we brought them back to that planning workshop. And I guess the little win we had for creativity there is that the ideas that we presented about how we could address these problems were broader than the people in the room. So that did stem people to be a bit more creative in that example. But I think, yeah, at that stage, that was kind of where we got to. But we do have another example at Clear Horizon we're working on at the moment, which is where we're actually doing a bit of a pro bono work to test a bit of this design stuff. So we're working with a group that are trying to save a species of bird, and we had a design workshop with them, and we actually really wanted to tackle this question that you've got here about really getting people to think creatively, because we had half the room was evaluators, so we have this tendency to go into a really systematic thing, and it might be an evaluator approach as well, but what we did was go and look for tools that stem creativity, and we tried a couple, but one of the ones that worked quite well was the 5 whys, which is where we got to interview each other, and this is when we're in the define phase, but we essentially had the people who work in saving the malleefowl in the room, and got Clear Horizon staff to interview them around you know, what the key challenges were, and then in order to sort of unpack that more and sort of build it out and map out what the challenges were, we used this technique called the interviewing technique called the 5 whys, where they would identify a challenge, and then we would say, oh, well, why is that a challenge? And then they'd say why, and then we'd ask why, sort of until you couldn't get any further, and that tended to broaden out and allow us to do a bit of divergent thinking on the challenges. So it was a long way to answer your question, but consulting widely and then bringing that back to a small group was one way, and then this technique, the 5 whys, was another way that we've been able to break out of a little bit of and bring a little bit more divergent and creative thinking into our workshops. No worries. Does anyone want to ask anything else, or otherwise I might move on, because you can get in touch as well afterwards. I'm quite enjoy talking about all this stuff, so if you ever want to I don't know, if you've got a question, give me a call. I might not have an answer, but yeah, I'm happy to answer it, or have a go at answering it. All right, so there's just a tiny little bit of housekeeping at the end here. So this is from, there's a Design SIG executive, and we meet, I don't know, not too regularly, every couple of months or so, but just so everyone knows, we've got a LinkedIn group, and that's where we stay updated and post a lot of our any updates or anything that we're up to. That's where you'll find the videos from the other 3 webinars that have been presented so far. We also have this year we've got a pre-conference workshop being delivered by Jess Dart. So she's the founding director here at Clear Horizon, but she'll be doing that with Chris Vanstone. So he's really one of the leading designers in the country, and Jess and Chris have been working together a lot for the last year. So he's the head designer at the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, and yeah, they're really going to go in and they're trying to pitch their workshop as human-centered design for evaluators. As far as I know, they are going to unpack some stages of that double diamond as well. So if you're interested in getting into that, that might be a really interesting one to sign up for. Anyone who's not going to the pre-conference but is going to Canberra, there's a few SIG members who'll be delivering some talks there. So one of them is by Matt Healy, and he's doing a talk on a framework for bridging design and evaluation. Jess will be doing another talk, and that'll be really about evaluators working as designers. So I imagine she'll pick up on a few of the ideas here. A lot of them do come from her. And yeah, then Vanessa's doing something looking at how we might change the AES to be more relevant for us. And I guess from the Design SIG's perspective, we are thinking about, how design fits in going forward. But yeah, the last thing, to be aware of is that next year, so we're thinking quite a bit ahead now, but in 2018, the AES Design Evaluation SIG is taking a big role in organising the conference, which is going to be in Tasmania. But SIG members are more than welcome to get in touch if you want to be involved in that. Any other feedback is appreciated, but otherwise I might leave it there. Thanks for coming along.